Hey, my Kinkins, it's Friday, and I'm finally recording one of these when I'm not asleep. That's awesome. I really appreciated your treatise on nerddom the other day. Not that I haven't looked at that on the internet before once or twice. And I really appreciated how you helped expand the view of nerddom, and it's not just this little subcategory of culture that's weird things that people don't understand, but there's lots of things that people are nerdy about. I would add one thing, though, that I think there's a level of enthusiasm that comes with nerddom that goes beyond just knowing things. And I think you expressed that, but just to really say it. Nerds are passionate. Speaking of that, I thought today I'd talk to you about one of my oldest, greatest nerd passions. My original entry into nerddom. Star Wars. My earliest childhood memories, going to see Empire Strikes Back when I was 2. I was in the theater at 2 years old with my grandparents. The armrests were up here. I remember seeing that movie. I remember how exciting and thrilling it was. I remember the cool things happening on screen and the awesome music. And it was very much beyond me at that point, but I remember being just sucked into that world and not wanting to leave ever again. Since that time, I've been a huge Star Wars nerd. I had a Star Wars t-shirt marathon at school recently, and that led to lots of questions from classmates. Hey, did you hear Disney bought Star Wars? What do you think about that? Hey, man, did you like those original movies, like the prequel ones? Are those original ones? I don't even know. Oh, hey, man, I heard they're bringing back the old actors for the new movies. How's that gonna be? Hey, you know that ship that had, like, the wings and then there was, like, a thing in the middle? It was, like, flew? It's called a TIE Fighter. Instead of answering all the questions that I've been getting, I thought instead I would give you something very unique and special that's important to no one but me. Ryan's Star Wars canon. So we'll see if I can pull it off, but here are the things that I have curated into my own personal Star Wars universe. Number 1, the original trilogy. Of course the original trilogy is in here. I love the original trilogy. A New Hope feels almost soap opera-ish with its bombastic music and its 70s film grain and weirdness and overacting, but it's wonderful. Empire Strikes Back is an excellent film. Excellent film. The lighting, sound design, the cinematography, the set design, the music, the script is actually good. The direction is actually good. The acting is actually good. Yeah, it's awesome. And Return of the Jedi, well, Return of the Jedi. You see, here's the thing about Return of the Jedi. I remember seeing that in the theater, of course, as a child. I went with my dad, but I went several times. And those toys and that movie and that whole part of Star Wars became the most lived in for me. So it has a very, very deep tie to my childhood and my nostalgia. However, in the marathon I did recently, I noticed that Return of the Jedi really tonally felt different. It kind of started to show its age a little bit, I think. It's very slapsticky and just not as grounded and rooted as the others. Disclaimer, I've watched the original trilogy over 200 times, and movies will wear thin after that long. But I still love Return of the Jedi. It is fun. It has cool things in it. It's a great part of the story. Vader gets redeemed, and it's resolved. So, that's the original trilogy. Number 2. Anything written by Timothy Zahn. In 1991, Timothy Zahn wrote Heir to the Empire, which reignited passion for Star Wars. He even got George Lucas interested in revisiting the movies. Which... What? No. Yeah. We won't go into that right now. Lucas does stuff, but that's fine. See the People versus George Lucas. Okay. But that was the birth of the expanded universe as we know it now. Dark Horse Comics also launched comic series at that time. Everything got real popular and blew up. That's when we started seeing the flood of Star Wars books and comics and games and things. But his books are awesome. They have the adventure and the characters and the spirit of Star Wars. They have the feel and rhythm of a cinematic epic space opera, and they're always great reads and great fun. Number 3. I know you're wondering why this wasn't number 1, but my favorite author lately is Karen Traviss. She wrote Republic Commando series, and I have reread those more than any other Star Wars book easily. They are amazing. Where Timothy Zahn does a great job of honoring the adventure and spirit of Star Wars, Karen Traviss deconstructs a lot of odd statements and events, bad characterizations, things happening. problematic fallacies of logic, and a lot of things that I would consider mistakes from like the prequel trilogy, and then she makes them make sense and have importance in a real world context. It's very fascinating, and it's also a different perspective. It's military people doing military things, and it's very grounded in that. It's not the lofty Jedi and these 5 people keep saving the world over and over again. Love those books. Number 4. Speaking of military things in Star Wars, the X-Wing series. Now, I know you like this one because you've at least read the first book, but the Michael Stackpole, Aaron Allston, all those guys wrote really, really cool books about not just dogfighting in space with X-Wings, which is a really cool part of these books, but also like almost a Tom Clancy-esque overarching political military events. The Rebel Alliance emerging into the New Republic. The fall of Coruscant from Imperial hands and turned over to the Rebels. Cool big things like that keep happening, and they're very fun reads, and they're very well written. Number 5. I almost didn't want to include this one because I really didn't enjoy the book all that much when it was first written. But the thing about this one is it's not just a book. It's also a comic book. But it's not just a comic book, it's also a video game. It's not just a video game, it's also a soundtrack. And if you think I mean that that's the retelling of the same story every time, it's not. Shadows of the Empire was a unique venture that has now since been replicated. They released different stories. The book follows the main characters from the movies. The video game follows Dash Rendar, a new character that's pretty much a Han Solo stand-in, but he's a lot of fun. And the comic book follows Boba Fett. This kind of multi-perspective approach to the event, I really, really enjoyed it. I liked that there were all these different things happening in all these places with all these different characters. And the other thing I have to mention is the soundtrack is really good. Joe McNeely, I think, wrote it, maybe? Check that one. I still have songs from that on my playlist right now. So it has great music, totally worth a listen. Here's an EU disclaimer real quick too. There are tons of books and comics, and some of them I've read, some of them I've not, but anything that I haven't mentioned, those are on the periphery for me. Number 6. So when Timothy Zahn first started writing Heir to the Empire, he asked the people at Lucas Licensing, whatever group that was, LucasArts, I think. He asked them what kind of background information they had on the Star Wars universe, and they shipped him the West End game role-playing source book series. If you don't know, this is the first Star Wars role-playing game, and it was a massive multi-volume encyclopedia to the Star Wars universe. It must have been written by some people with military backgrounds because they gave troop movement breakdowns and organizational order of battle for the Navy and all this crazy complex stuff. And I loved it. I read all the adventures. I read the different source books for the Empire and the Rebel Alliance and the Fringe. You have to learn about the Hutts and why they were a big deal, the Rebel Special Forces, and what kind of special missions they went on, pirates and defectors, and all kinds of cool stuff. Bedrock encyclopedia of Star Wars, right there. Number 7! Speaking of games, the X-Wing and TIE Fighter game have to be mentioned, and they are definitely in my canon. And the X-Wing game was really fun. It had a lot of cool moments, and you got to kind of tag along with Luke at different missions and things like that. It was fun. The TIE Fighter game did something unprecedented and let you play as an Imperial. That's right. An Imperial, the bad guys? Yeah. In your first campaign, you fight rebels. Totally. You shut down rebels evacuating from Hoth. Crazy. You fight pirates. You invade a planetary system and quell an uprising on 2 warring planets. Then you fight a defector and another Imperial admiral who tries to do a coup. It's really, really cool. The space battles were cool, and they were very epic in their scale, and they were very exciting. But the cool thing was, they went to a lot of effort to make it an awesome story that it didn't even have to. The game could have ridden on just the mechanics, but it didn't. It had an awesome story that pulled you in. Number 8! Speaking of games and story, who's got the best? Let me hear you say it. Come on. You know. Come on. That's right. You know what I'm talking about. Knights of the Old Republic. There you go. This might be sacrilegious to say, but that is the best Star Wars story out there. Of anything. Ever. I don't want to give away spoiler alerts, but I will tell you this. It's on the iPad right now, so you should go buy it and play it. Knights of the Republic does an amazing job. I'm going to talk about this a lot. I'm going to keep saying these words. Spirit, adventure, characters. But by being set 3,000 years before, we're not worried about continuity and how things are tied together and what the main characters from the movies are doing and all this stuff. It does the best job of anything I've seen of grasping what Star Wars is about. Number 9! Did you ever want to play a game where you weren't a Jedi? Where you weren't just always like, oh, okay, now I'm a Jedi, now I'm a lightsaber, and we're one of the last Jedi in the galaxy like everyone else. Good, because Dark Forces came out, and it's awesome. Now, this came out a long time ago, and it looks like really bad graphics, like even for a phone game now. This was back when Doom was on computers. Yeah, the first one. Dark Forces lets you go on secret missions as a rebel agent into Imperial installations and gun down stormtroopers and find your way, break out prisoners and slog your way through swamps and lots of cool stuff from a first-person shooter perspective where you were not a Jedi and were not using Force powers, and it was such a refresher. By the way, its sequel and subsequent games had you becoming a Jedi and using Force powers. So much for that. Number 10! Alright, last one on my list is The Clone Wars, the micro series by Jindy Tartakovsky. I'm going to say that wrong, sorry. This is one of my favorite things to watch, and I watch it with my son now even. It does a wonderful job of doing what the prequels didn't, and that is, how do you create tension when there's lots of Jedi? And how do you create tension when there's lots of Jedi who know what they're doing and they can do anything and they're crazy good at stuff? This series figures out a way. You have a good character journey for Anakin, where you can see some of his progression. Anakin and Obi-Wan act like friends and are friends, but they are tense too. The Jedi are afraid of someone and run from them and can't fight someone because they're spooked. Great series, well drawn. This is the guy that brought you Dexter's Laboratory and Samurai Jack, so you know it's going to be good. Anyways, that's my super long rant on Star Wars. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing what you have to tell me next. I know you got one of these for Star Trek for me. I know it. See you soon.